Hello, everyone. Welcome to Ravenstar's Witching Hour. I'm your host and head witch, Miss Dolores Leuven, at the helm this evening. I want to give a shout-out to everybody at Revolution Radio, staff, producers, listeners, chat room, and thank everybody for tuning in tonight. We are 100% listener-supported, so if you like what you're hearing, please click on the donate button. We appreciate your support, and thank you for any contribution you can make to this excellent station. And a blessed Luganasa, or Lammas, to all my pagan and witches out there who celebrate, which was on Friday the 1st. And, of course, this Sabbath is not about blood sacrifice, by the way. And so all you fanatical tourists out there who like to mock the solstice, pagan, or holidays connected to the craft, please swim in the shallow end of the pool. And that's all I'll say about that. And you are listening to Studio A. And my special guest this evening is John Storm. And John is something of a regular on my show and always has incredible information and wisdom to share with us involving the craft and just about any topic. Very happy to have him on tonight. I know he's been through a lot, so I'll give you a rundown of his bio. John was born in 1953 in a family of hereditary witches that count their ancestry all too many centuries ago in ancient Tara. He was raised and trained in the craft as the only male witch in his family by his grandmother. He has grandchildren of his own. He began serious martial arts training in 1963. His sensei became his father figure. He strove for perfection, holding a second-degree black belt in Mas Oya-mas Karate and a master's ranking in Chinese Kenpo. By the early 1970s, between training for tournaments and running his own small chain of studios, he took radio and TV broadcasting at El Paso Community College in Colorado Springs, Colorado. This gave John his first good taste of journalism. 30-plus years later, and dying to write some of these experiences in a book, he wrote an entire series in the Witch Clan theme. These are character-driven stories with true-to-life characters and experiences melded into an entertaining fantasy. His first full-length novel is the series is Matriarch of the Witch Clan. He and his family sponsor and are also registered as the Witches of the World at the Witch's Voice, witchbox.com, and can be found also in their archives. And John has been working on his book in a work in progress called Practical Witchery, of course, and that's available for free on Bookrix, and that's something you all should be paying attention to and accessing. It's phenomenal. And please welcome John to the show this evening. How you doing, John?
Hanging in there.
I know it's been rough, and my heart goes out to you. I know you've been going through some rough tides the past few days, and of course, I don't know if you want to share that with the audience or not. This is like ridiculous. Yeah, we can share some good stuff, and
yeah. People are miserable and they want to get away from things like that, and it's like I don't blame them. I want to get away from things like that too.
Oh, I so agree with you. Yeah. Well, unfortunately, it feels like the world's imploding all around us, and yeah, just like it's drama of the week, huh? Insofar as what's going on. Yeah. A lot of that's happening here, and of course, what always sticks with me the last time you were on the show was when you always say, "Be the unexpected," and I think there's so much truth to that. Be what they're not expecting, I guess, is really what you were trying to say. But it makes a lot of sense to me on so many different levels, so that they can't really get a read on their opponents, so to speak. So
that's true. And our government has been like all this stuff that I've been going through. It's like it's not like I didn't see it coming. Mm-hmm. They are very predictable, and in fact, they like to follow tried and true formulas. They've been using a lot of the same formulas for hundreds of, if not thousands of years. And they haven't changed up from that because it's been very profitable for them. I mean, you got to hand it to them. They have profited greatly. This whole paradigm that we're in right now, I call it the golden age of warlocks. Mm-hmm. Because never in the entire history of the earth, unless it was prior to some cataclysm before that nearly wiped out humanity, and there's been a few of them in the history of the earth, has the warlock section of the craft been at ever such a golden age as this. I mean, they've always been around in their own way, but never this powerful and this in control.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have to agree on that one. And another thing is, are they really warlocks, or are they just dysfunctional psychotics? I mean, which one is it? Do you really think they're actually magical practitioners?
Oh yeah, it is the craft. It is the craft. They use it all the time. I get a kick out of every once in a while I'll talk to somebody and they'll say, yeah, I've heard about that witchcraft, man. I don't believe it. That stuff won't work on me because I don't believe in it. And it's kind of like it does, and it is. And if you don't think so, you have to question why all these. Now, oftentimes, if you talk about witchcraft or witches or any of a whole number of very legitimate topics to a lot of the academia and the people in power around you. They're going to look at you and try to give you that snide little smile as if you don't know what you're talking about. You're just an ignorant, superstitious dolt, and that stuff isn't real. And it's kind of like, if it isn't real, if they give you a congressional medal of honor, the highest medal they got, what are they going to give you? They're going to give you a pentagram with 2 points up. Mm-hmm. Okay? They don't believe in any of this stuff, but they use all the most Luciferian, Promethean, and occult symbols on everything they do. They use numerology. They're very big on dates and times and that. They're fanatic on it. In fact, they can't resist throwing you clues. And like I say, these things that, all seeing eye and all this kind of stuff is on everything they do. When I was a boy, I remember my Christian friends trying to tell me the Masons were a Christian organization. And it's kind of like, now look, I didn't really have a lot of respect for organized Christianity. Christian Friends is one thing. Organized Christianity, we got a long history, and it's all bad. Mm-hmm. I have no respect for it whatsoever. Christians, another deal. But anyway, I had some friends, that I tried going to church so I could try to fit in with them in that, and I'd meet some of the church deacons, and they got the Masonic rings with the pentagrams on them, and it's look, I know when I see a pentagram 2 points up, nobody has to tell me what that means. I don't care what you want to say you think it means or anything else like that. Look, you can go wearing Beelzebub's or Baphomet's name on you if you want to and say it means Ralph. But that doesn't change what it is, So, it's kind of, well, they say they're a Christian organization and they're this, that, or the other thing. And it's kind of like, look, I see the sigils. I know what they mean. I learned runes and this stuff, while most other kids were learning their alphabet,
Exactly. And so when does the cycle break? I mean, obviously, okay, so you have the warlocks, but what about the good people like us, the good practitioners of the craft? I mean, why isn't anyone countering all these agendas and all these organizations?
Well, actually, there's a number of us that are, but people have been, their whole history and their culture has been uprooted and taken away from them. Karl Marx once wrote, and actually the saying is actually older than him. It gets attributed to him, but it goes long before him. Is that people separated from their roots are easily persuaded. They're easily controlled or manipulated. And that's exactly what has happened to generations upon generations upon generations of human beings in the world today. Mm-hmm. Now, you got to understand, warlocks literally means oath breaker, all right? Witch means wise one. It doesn't mean girl. It doesn't mean hag. It doesn't mean, wise. It could be a wise woman. It could be a wise man. If the King James Bible was written in Gaelic instead of King James English, there would have been witches in that day came to visit Jesus. Mm-hmm. The 3 wise men would be 3 witches, mm-hmm. Because that's exactly what it means. The word. And warlocks play word magic. Now, even as a sect, as an ancient sect, warlocks like, what the hell was that guy's name? Supposed to be the father of
Aleister Crowley?
Who?
Aleister Crowley?
No. But before him, ancient Roman and Greek times, father of music and mathematics.
Pythagoras?
Pythagoras, that's right. Now, these guys used to meet in secret, right? Now, this was a time before Christianity now. There were mages, witches, druids, in all the major infrastructures in the world. China, everywhere. Europe. So, witches didn't have to hide. Now, certain types of sorcerers had to hide because they made themselves a bad name. Now, the interesting Greek word for sorcerer was pharmakeia, the word you get pharmacy from. They deal in potions, and there's a lot more to it than just that. I'm being oversimplified here. Mm-hmm. But everybody attended a mystery school. There was like the higher learning that was, college. If a town had a library, it had a college because now it had curriculum. All right, and if it had a college, it had a mystery school. If it was any good, I mean, you'd get so far, it'd be like going to junior high and dropping out there. You got to get all the way up to get your full diploma. You'd go to the mystery school. Now, if you went to the mystery school, so you wanted to be a physician, you took Hippocratic oath. If you wanted to be any other kind of mage or anybody who's going to use some variance of the craft, now you're going to learn things that can control people. You can hurt people with it, or you can help people with it. So you take an oath, which is a lot like the Hippocratic oath that the doctors have. Higher learning, you take an oath. I'm going to use this only for people's good. I'm never going to use it to hurt them, to profit myself at their expense or anything else. There's an oath you took. You're going to take what you learn back to your community, whoever they are, whether you're living in, China, the Mideast, Europe, or what. You're going to take it home, and you're going to use it to fit your people. That's why they endowed you with these wonderful teachings about these things. It's like when you go to a karate studio and you start learning advanced martial arts. Your master's going to insist that you do not use it to be a bully. And if you do, there's going to be repercussions. You take a note. You're going to learn this where you can hurt people easily. You're going to be responsible for it. Okay, so everybody took these oaths. Now, warlocks, the difference, the word got coined because these were unscrupulous mages. They used this stuff at the expense of others to benefit themselves. The sorcerers was, hey, look, I give you some of this drug. I got a customer that comes back to me every time. It doesn't really help them, but it helps me. And so the sorcerers and the warlocks, the reason they met in secret and nobody else had to back then is because every time they got into a deal with somebody got the bad end of it. So they were criminals. They were notorious. This was not their golden age. I mean, they were doing their thing, so was everybody else. But they were not the ones. Pythagoras did not discover music or mathematics. People were using pi and building stuff before he was a twinkle in his grandfather's eye. Mm-hmm. It's like they say, Marco Polo discovered the Silk Road. It's like the Celts were trading ponies with the Mongols along the Silk Road for thousands of years before Marco Polo was born. But they always have to put everything centered around there. And they got their holy language is Latin. It's a trade language, you understand. It's a banker's language. And they use this word magic. Things don't mean exactly what you say anymore. Now people think a warlock is a male witch. I remember somebody once, another witch friend, once remarked to my grandmother that she was training me up to be a warlock, and boy, she gave her like both barrels. The words meant something, but now they use the doctors. A lot of them are warlocks. They promise their Hippocratic oath don't mean crap, that they'll schedule you for surgeries and drugs that you don't need, but they get kickbacks on. Mm-hmm. But they make money on. What's the result of that last test we took? Well, there's a new Audi in the freaking parking lot, the physician section. Right. That's the results of that test. It's not for my benefit, it's for his benefit. Your legal system, when we put the magi in magistrate, you've got to understand the power involved. And he's wearing the black robe. That's traditional. Druids wore white, witches wore black. Druids were solar, witches were lunar. The reason we wore white and black is because people among the Celts, you distinguished your faction, your clan, by the colored tartans you wore. And if you say, like, my mother's side clan was kind of a midnight blue kind of tart. My father's side of the family was kind of a yellow tartan, the Shamans. But since I became a witch, you don't wear your clan tartan, you wear black. It's a neutral color. That means when two clans are fighting, they got to stop when you walk through the middle of it, because you're the one that's going to put both sides, either side, the wounded, back together. That you're the one that's going to negotiate the peace treaties or the terms or whatever it is. You're the magistrate. You're the magi. and they're still that today, except they're warlocks. The difference between being wise, a witch's power, now this is wise, all right, this epitomizes wise. A witch's power, you've seen the two fingers up under the eyes there, represents the will and word. No matter who's looking or who's not, power is visible, power is invisible. They know your will and word are unbroken. And this carries weight. It carries weight with liberals who deal with you. They know if you tell them something that they can rely on it, they can, quote, take it to the bank. When you're dealing with invisible powers with say and that, they know that if you say something, if you make a threat that, hey, if you don't get out of here, I'm going to make life miserable for you, they know that you will shake heaven and earth to do it, and they will obey. It carries power. It carries weight. It carries authority with it. But warlocks do this little oath-breaking thing. They like to play games. Even when you're dealing with the legal system, they use a lot of Latin terms. The doctors use a lot of Latin terms. I remember once somebody had gone and washed some fiberglass curtains in the wash machine at an apartment complex that I lived in, at Colorado Springs once. And I broke out in these, I'm a blonde. The fiberglass raises hell at my skin. And it get in there and it made all these little red dots, and I'm itchy like I'm crawling with ants. And I go to the doctor, and now I had a very classical education. You have to understand that I'm old school, old craft, raised by my grandmother, who's also very old craft. So we're kind of very old-fashioned in ways we look at things. So I had to learn Latin. So I said to my doctor, exactly what is this? And he says, well, it's a pittorized rosea. And, I meant to cuss him up a blue streak up one side and down the other, because basically he says, you got rosy skin in Latin. It's kind of like, duh, that's why I came here. I got this big red rash on me. What the hell is it? It's a big red rash in Latin. That'll be $60, please. And, but they play this word magic, They say they're going to do this or that for you, and they put it under, we got the Patriot Act. We got the NDAA, National, we don't call it aggression, we call it the Department of Defense, not the Department of the Military or Department of Aggression or Terrorism, right? It's defense. They play games with the words to give the wrong impression, to purposely mislead people. They say, are you John Storm when you get into it? And he's picturing this name in all capital letters, Capitus Maximus. They got terms for this, which basically means he can identify you as a straw man, as a corporation, as a representative, not as a human being. So therefore, your rights as a human being do not apply in his court. Mm-hmm. And, all of this is a subterfuge, a witch. I'm a good example of it. I play pretty straight with people. I'll tell you what it is in the best, simplest terms that I can. Explain to you why this works or why it doesn't work. Knowledge is power. I want you to have power. A warlock wants to have power over you. Wants to take power away. Knowledge is power. Bad knowledge gives him more power, you less power. You take those little occult green talismans with all the occult symbols on them. Look, it is not worth the paper it's printed on. They just print it up out of thin air. It is not worth anything. When I was a boy, there were gold certificates and there were silver certificates that were redeemable for $1 worth of silver or gold for something of honest value. What you have today is a banker's IOU, and the bankers are corrupt as hell. They won't even allow you to audit them. They got more power than the government does, and the government's exercising power over you. Of course, they're exercising power over the government. It's all a warlock thing. And people base their entire life history, their worth, their self-value, and the value of other people based on how many of these occult talismans that are worthless as can be. In fact, worth zero would be an upgrade, because every time you take one of these dollar bills and let's say you make a bet, 10 of these dollar bills, and you make a bet with somebody on a football game or something, and they win, and you pay them the $10 bill. And Uncle Sam or the Fed does not get a piece of that transaction. That is an illegal transaction. They can put you in jail for that, for tax evasion. They can fine you. They can do everything is to take power away from you. You want to buy $10 worth of pots and pans at a store or something like that. You're not getting $10 worth, because you're going to have to pay the taxes on that. If you go to buy stuff for your car, you got to pay taxes on top of the taxes on top of the taxes. Now, here in New York State, it's like 8 cents on the dollar, and then there's federal excise tax if we're talking about car things. Yeah, so there's another like 21 cents or something like that of that. And like it says, all of this is to give them power and take power away from you. Mm-hmm. And my whole thing is to put power back in the hands of the people. Whether you're a witch or not, being wise is what you need to be, no matter who you are. It doesn't mean you have to go join a coven. A coven will make you wise when walking into a bathroom, makes you a toilet.
So true. Yeah, and it's sad. Well, go ahead, John.
Well, that's about where we're at now.
Yeah, but it's so weird because, each week it becomes more and more toxic. I mean, everything that I'm observing just through my own, as a secret witness, in this country is just, it's horrible. It's absolutely disgusting.
Well, one of my favorite witches of all times was King Solomon. And he wrote that the eye is never full. And it was true back in his days, because that's when the sorcerers started doing things that pretty much gave them a bad name. Now, this does not mean that sorcery is bad in itself, or that the craft is bad in itself. I mean, good sorcery can get you healed. Mm-hmm. People use sorcery all the time. Carlos Castanedas, Don Juan Matus, and they were sorcerers. I met some Yaqui sorcerers back when I was doing a lot of my ultra jobs down in Mesoamerica, but and that was an interesting time. I got to meet witches all over, all kinds of witches. But and they were decent folks. They were good folks. They were honest folks. Like I said, it doesn't mean the sorcery itself is bad or the craft is bad. It's how it's being used. And like I said, I'd like people to be wise. Knowledge is power. And as long as you got it, as long as you don't have it, they're going to lead you around by the nose, which they've been doing to everybody for centuries. Mm-hmm. Now, what we have with the craft is, well, it's kind of new to this era, and it's why we have what I call the golden age of warlocks. Because out of the 200 original weirding clans, only the 13 Illuminist or Luciferian ones are pretty much at the top of the heap today. And it was them that hijacked the Christian religion and everything else and made all the other kinds of witchery illegal. So they practiced their black magic, their Luciferian stuff. I mean, it's just the opposite end of the coin from God as far as the way they're selling it anyway. It's, Christianity came top down to Europe through the nobility, and so did Luciferian. You read Madame Blavatsky's testimony. She'll tell you she learned Luciferianism from the French court. Mm-hmm. All right. So basically, what people got is they got separated from their roots. The other clans got chased into hiding. I know ours did, and they either got persecuted into oblivion, or, well, actually, I think the bloodlines are still around. It's just they're so disconnected they don't know who they are. They got traits. They got abilities, and if they're a little bit psychic, people think they're a little bit crazy. And I'll bet you there's any number of your own listeners out there that have some kind of gift or another, and because it's not one of the 5 dogmatic senses, people think they're nuts or they're possessed or they don't know what they're talking about, but invariably they do know what they're talking about. Mm-hmm. And it's because they're from one or more of these clans. I mean, we've been around for thousands and thousands of years, so genetically we spread out quite a bit. It's in the gene pool. It's in your DNA. It's going to show up somewhere, if not in you and your kids or your grandkids or somewhere down the line. So all these people that do have a handle on what they are and how to use it, people that have been brought up like me, Well, most of them are from warlock families, and we'll give you an idea of the Rothschilds. The Golden Dawn has been their personal coven from its inception.
Mm-hmm.
You got guys like Aleister Crowley, John Dee, and that. Now, for a lot of people, that's the only way you could get any kind of training in the craft, because everybody else was either deep in hiding and not going to admit to anything I'd say for fear, but it's an actual fact, the kind of persecution. I mean, witch hunts pop up all the time. You got something somebody wants, they're going to hang you, burn you, whatever, take it away, and whether you're a witch or not. And if you're not their kind of witch or their kind of Christian, well, you're going to die for that too.
Mm-hmm.
And, of course, we're going to tell you it's a religion of love, but not a word we say means anything it's supposed to mean.
No, not at all. Everything is inside out, upside down. Yeah, it's really interesting, and yeah, I know about the Golden Dawn pretty well. But is there a way for these for a lot of people who have been kind of disjointed with their ancestry to reestablish those links through ritual? And can they do it as a solitaire, or how do they go about reestablishing that?
I would start as a solitaire, and I might even suggest finishing, depending on what you end up with in the line of covens or anything like that. You have Wicca. Now Wicca is an interesting thing. Now, I've had people say, well, you're a hoity-toity because you're one of these old craft witches in that witch clan, and I got a lot of respect for Wicca. I don't think people give it anywhere near enough the respect it deserves, because they are the most outspoken. It's a Reconstructionist religion, and it is a religion, just like being a Lutheran or anything else. But sometimes you can learn things in the rituals. Sometimes the rituals keep you away from understanding the true meaning of a thing, because you get all bound up in the details and don't see the forest for the trees. And it happens a lot. But sometimes even a religion, you can, you're going through the rituals and you're understanding what the different things mean, how they all relate to each other, and then a little light comes on. I'm like, that's what that is. And then eventually you don't need the ritual anymore to perform that piece of magic.
Right.
And when you're that way, we call you an adept witch. When you don't need to go through all the hocus pocus and rigmarole and all that, you're an adept. You can almost do it on a whim now. So some of us are born that way. Some of us, my grandmother was an adept, but like I say, by the time she was 50, that was kind of a moot point because she was good.
Mm-hmm.
All those years, you get good at it.
Right.
But what they did, I believe, the guy that started was a fellow named Gardner, and then there was another fellow, Alexander something after him, that's a slightly different sect. So originally there was like the Gardnerians and the Alexandrian sects, and there's all kinds now. There's almost more of them than there are of the Christians now. Mm-hmm. But I believe he came from a proper clan or something. He had proper teachings, but they filled in the gaps with a lot of stuff that, real pagans wouldn't have used. Not that it was bad, and I learned something from Taoism and that, but I mean, they took stuff from Eastern mysticism, they took something from Jewish Kabbalah, they took stuff from Sufi or Christian mysticism, and they filled in the blanks wherever they could with whatever they could get. So they kind of tried to reconstruct the old craft, and they didn't fully succeed at it, but they really didn't do a bad job, And like I says, when they start coming to around the 1950s, they're the ones that started getting people to reconsider what a witch really is. So, as an old craft witch, I got a tip of the pointing hat to them for doing that for them, because we certainly weren't going to come out into the public and say anything and get all that persecution and everything. It took a lot of guts and a lot of, like I said, I really got to hand it to them. So, you had groups like that. I know for a while my aunts raised a fuss about Grandma training a male, so they didn't like me around for anything. So Grandma fixed me up with, when I was about 12 years old or so, with some Arcadian Dianic witches. Arcadians are a little bit different from regular Dianic witches because regular Dianic witches it's like women only. And in fact, our own Danaan witchery that my grandma practiced was pretty much women only. Because you couldn't trust the men anyway, and they were passing it down mother to daughter for centuries, and this is how they avoided all the persecutions that kind of came with this stuff. It's how we survived. So the Arcadians, well, they're Dianic witches too. However, they will use a little male energy in the course of their rites and stuff. There was times when I couldn't be with the group as they were doing womanly things. But there was times too where I played Diana's consort and things like that. And so she had me get a little experience with them, and during that time I had another master come around and baptize me in the Mithras, and it was kind of an interesting time. I got a little variation on her own craft, or a little more rounding out. I can't say I'm a purist. So, like I said, I'm not knocking how Wicca takes a little bit of this and that, but
yeah, no, I think they do too. But I love the aspect of Wicca too, and of course, I go through a lot of different levels of the craft in general. But I do think that the ancient mystery schools, a lot of those mystery schools were based on what we would consider to be the craft. And then I look at the Masons, and just from the research I've done on the Masonic level, it seems to me like they've adopted a lot of those rituals from the true witches, and have converted them. I mean, literally, they're almost identical. Would you agree or no?
Yes, I would, except sometimes they'll change the wording, they'll change this actually stands for this actually stands for that. And, they'll do things levels within levels. Now, in a lot of craft, a good witch will tell you, okay, this is your first step. I'm trying to think. The Mithridatic type priests, they had like 7 classes or 7 steps. And they had a few things that I liked and a few things I really didn't care for at all. I didn't like the baptism thing, getting bloody with the bull blood and all that kind of stuff. That was kind of a gross out, and I didn't like that happening to that animal. Mm-hmm. And it was over top of me. They put you in a pit, with a grate over the top, and then they slaughter this bull over on top of you, and it just kind of, you're naked in a pit and covered in bull glut.
I don't think I know that.
It's not a pleasant experience, and you come out fully blooded as you're a warrior and all this kind of stuff, macho, beat on the chest type thing. And there's a lot of testosterone in that. But they have like 7 levels. Now the thing is they'll tell you first level, this is this and this is that, but the Masons and even the CIA and the NSA, they built their structure, and the Pentagon builds their structure also in the same way. Is they compartmentalize, and they'll tell you this means this, and that's all it means. You get a book for your thing, and that's what you're told. This little all-seeing eye stands for this or that, and it has different meanings at different stages. And when you get up there a little bit, you start finding that there is levels within levels. Mm-hmm. Nothing means exactly what they say it is. They only lead you this far to get you to be this compliant with them, and if they can trust you further, they'll allow you to go to the next level. And if they don't think so, or they just want to use you, well, they'll never let you get to the next level. Mm-hmm. But in a good craft place, they're going to tell you, for you at this step, this is what this means. It has other meanings as you go on. We're going to make sure you understand that, because people have a tendency, if you tell them that, they're going to be dogmatic. It's this, it's always this, it's nothing like that. And if you ever try to question one of these other people in their religion or their craft, they're going to tell you, this means this, and it never means anything else like that. And it's kind of like, yeah, this guy's kind of 1 or 2 dimensional. And those are the people you control. Mm-hmm. I think in my dimensionalities and perception, I kind of painted picture at different points, a 1-pointed person, a 2-dimensional person, 3-dimensional form. We want to be 5 and upwards. Right. The pentagram in that. The people lower than that, you control them. What they don't know, it's kind of like a horse wearing blinders, a bull with a ring in his nose. You can somebody that's got all the points working can lead that person about. Now, you have to trust whether that person is going to be honest or altruistic and want you to, to succeed, or just use you and then throw you away when you're no longer useful.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And they certainly did that. It's interesting with the MK Ultra that you were pulled into. Obviously, that was that had something to do with your magical abilities, obviously, and of course, it sounds like they did run interference with your ability, or didn't they? Did they help enhance your abilities, or did they try to control it?
They more tried to control it. Specifically, what I remember most, I noticed it almost right away when they started doing it. The remote viewing. Now, when they'd have me, well, sometimes all I had to do was look into a candle, just quiet myself, look into a candle, and they'd say, okay, I'm thinking about a place where I was at, 5 o'clock yesterday. Describe it to me, and I'd either draw it or describe it, as I'm looking in there on it. But essentially, more often than not, to me it was remote viewing. I'm seeing where they're going, but there was something a little bit different about it than they wanted. So there was some variation between remote viewing and astral projection, where you just leave your body and go see. Mm-hmm. And time and space don't mean a lot when you're in that particular state. Now, more often than not, I would go see. Where's Dr. Holtzinger? Well, he's in the cafeteria. What's he doing? He's drinking coffee and he's eating strudel. Is he talking to you? No. Do you know what he's thinking about? Kind of focus in on him a little bit. Yeah, he's thinking about home. He's drinking coffee, eating the strudel, and he's thinking about his home in Karlsruhe, Germany. What's his home look like? Well, I start describing that, and it's kind of like, yeah, I can get all that. And they didn't want you to have that much information. Mm-hmm. So they come up with a new plan. If you look it up, what they got now this was back in 1968, 69, somewhere thereabouts, when I was doing this. Mm-hmm. They got a new way that they actually teach for MK for the government sponsored remote viewing. I call it pinging. They might have another name for it, but I call it pinging. Mm-hmm. They got a special thing, a pad that they'll sell you to learn this. And what questions to ask. They're going to give you coordinates for something. Now, what you do is you ask yourself one simple question, one simple aspect, one single point of the picture. Is it rural or urban? And it's the first thing that comes to your mind, you write down. Mm-hmm. Because it's going to be right. The very first thing. Okay, rural, it's rural. Okay. Man-made structures are natural. Man-made structures. How many? 2. And you still start, one thing at a time, right? And then you just send that back to somebody else in another department, and they determine that you're looking at a rural property with a house and a barn on it, and yada, yada, yada about it. But you didn't get it, they separated you from that information, right. Where the person that they're, they want to know what's on this coordinates, what's going on there, but they don't want you to know. Knowledge is power. They want the power, you can't have it. So the way they teach the remote viewing now, since around Ingo Swann's time, is this pinging technique. And basically what I used to do was like, yeah, I could go look, I could, what person you want me to check out? I can even tell you what not necessarily what he's thinking, what he's feeling, or, I can get the imagery. Mm-hmm. And I got an idea of what's going on. I got a feel, a flavor for it. I'm involved in it. So I started noticing, and then they would double talk. I was originally wanted to be tested for this ESP thing. And so I'd go for these tests all the time. And I'd say, well, okay, do I got ESP? And the doctor would say, well, you could have got the image subconsciously off the reflection of the cards on their, on the cornea of their eyes, or, something about them could have gave you this clue or that clue. And okay, next time we do it, they'd be in another room. Oh, do I got ESP? Well, it could have been this, that, or the other thing. And then I start reading the doctor, and it's like, this doctor doesn't want his name on anything associated with ESP, or he's freaking ruined with his brethren academia. Doesn't matter that we're accurate and it's all right and everything like that. He just doesn't want to be associated with it, and he doesn't want to say that he's ever believed in it. Right. Whether he's looking at it or not, nothing is going to get him to shake his income by saying anything about this. He's doing it for the government, and that's it. That's as far as he's going to go. And to me, it was like, all I wanted was validation. But they were using me for something else. They were manipulating me, leading me on, and, that's how they'd control me. The trying to really mess with my mind, they didn't want to do that too much because I'm too valuable for search and destroy as an ultra.
Mm-hmm. Right. And can you elaborate on that for the listeners, the search and destroy program?
Well, in the astral projection or the remote viewing, you have to be connected somehow, a link, they'll say, to your target or what the place you want to go. Now, let me give you a little background on astral projection and how a lot of that come around to be about what you have today. So like I say, I'm a very old craft person. I'm not a new age type witch. Mm-hmm. Essentially, back in the 19th century, the 1800s, there were several schools that took on this. They did case histories and stuff of cases of astral projection where people have appeared to other people, while they were in their sleep, and they saw what was going on the other side of the world. And there were certain things that most of these cases had in common. They give you a case of so-and-so. He's in France, and he's missing his sister, and he really needs to see her and tell her something, some kind of unfinished business. And somewhere far away at that particular time, say she's in England or in Essex or something like that, and, he falls asleep, and that was what was on his mind. That was what was stressing the blazes out of him. And then, miles away in England, his sister sees him walking around the house as a ghost. She thinks he died, and she's seeing his ghost. But he's alive, and he's in France, and he's very worried about her, and, and essentially it was his link. It was he fell into a deep sleep with nothing but her on his mind. And it's, so there has to be this really strong, a lot of ultra training is trauma based to give you the strongest motivations for trying to be there. You'll hear from Duncan a lot of times, he'll say failure is not an option. He used to repeat that like a mantra. And it's like, well, it really wasn't. And, like his life depended on it. It's like, yes, it did. and worse. And you'll hear that out of them, and that's how they connect us to things. You have to have a really strong connection to something to connect like that outside of your body, beyond time and space. And for me, as an ultra, well, I'm also very trained in ninjutsu, a master martial artist, and so I'm a master killer. Mm-hmm. But getting up to somebody close enough to break their neck, you can toss them down a flight of stairs, and this is what George Bush, when he was the head of the CIA, used to call the dark art of the happy accident. Mm-hmm. So you're not going to go running around looking for an assassin. The person slipped and fell down the stairs and broke his neck. It's an accident. So you got the plausible deniability. Mm-hmm. But finding that person, that drug lord, or we used to say, it had drug lords or warlords, had the word lord in it. Those were the people they sent us after. Jesus came back, they probably would have had me try to assassinate him too. Mm-hmm. So what they do is they give me a file, a picture, a few things, whatever they had on this person, to give me enough information to connect. And for a couple of weeks before the job, I'd obsess about this person. I'd do everything I can to focus on this person, see where they're at, what they're doing, what they're thinking, what they're feeling. I'm basically getting inside their head. FBI profilers do this stuff today. Mm-hmm. In fact, they teach it in Quantico, Virginia. So essentially, you're getting inside their head, and it's a very bad place to be, especially when you're thinking all the foul thoughts that these rotten, awful people are thinking and thrilling themselves with all the time. And it's like you're taking it in your own body. People say, "What do you read my mind?" And like, what makes you think I want to be there?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's like asking me to get into your pants with you or something like that. It's just about the same state, you know. It's intimate beyond beyond understanding for most people, and sometimes intimacy is what you don't want, especially with the wrong kind of people. But they get you to obsess. So during that time, I'd have this person on my mind all the time, and I'd know where he was. I'd know what he was thinking, where he's heading to, and basically I'd hone in on him, hunt him down. Somewhere along the line, we meet for a split second when nobody's looking directly at him, and all of a sudden, slips and breaks his neck or fractures his skull on something or whatever, depending on whatever kind of job it would be. And I would hunt them down, and this person would be taken out, and I could get away, and no fingers would be pointed at anybody, and, you know, Uncle Sam would take me home, and nobody'd be the wiser.
Right. And this was actually physical, so it wasn't you actually remotely taking this person down. This was actually a physical interaction.
No, more often than not, I went up and got him. Now, there was means, and they've used Duncan for that before. Mm-hmm. There were means of doing that, and it has been done, and I've even done it, but I'm not sure I fully understand exactly how. This is where they set you up with those altars.
Right.
And somewhere or another, that's ingrained in that one altar or something, and that has to be pulled up. I was on a job in Mexico once, way down southern Mexico, near where the borders of like Guatemala and Belize all kind of touch together, like. And I got captured, and they kind of hooked me up to this like metal box springs, you know, kind of cuffed me to it, and they shocked me, and it must have been on for days. You know, I just kind of go someplace far away in my head, and basically they're beating on a dead horse, but I was really a mess. And I had kept working the edge of the box springs, you know, with my bending the metal back and forth with my fist and that, as I was on this bed for days until the metal fatigued enough where I could break it, slip my cuff out of it, and got loose when they weren't watching me. And I remember getting loose, and I remember killing the first two guys I saw in the hacienda, and I was really in bad shape, and it's like I had to do this quick and right the first time because I didn't have any kind of strength for, like, getting into any all-out fight with anybody. Mm-hmm. And I don't remember much of what happened after that, but it was kind of like being on autopilot, putting one foot in front of the other until I finally got to a drop point where I could be picked up and they told me, well, we used to have a term for the spooks or the CIA when they come in. We used to call them the cleaning ladies or the janitors or stuff like that, because they'd come in and they kind of clean up, bribe people, tell them it was a rival gang or some kind of crap like that to, so nobody knew the truth. The government had all its plausibility. Mm-hmm. And they found out where I was held, and everybody it was a big compound, everybody was dead. And I didn't have anything like the right kind of strength left to. I mean, I had been on this thing for days, dehydrated, shocked. I was a mess. I don't know how those people died, but it had something to do with me. By the time they got there, wasn't any survivors.
Wow.
And so there's something to it. I know Duncan has described. Duncan and Dave Corso both have described cases of this, where, people for a distance out were all dead from this wave or whatever it was we created. But I don't understand it well enough to tell you like I would everything else.
Right. Well, that's really interesting. Well, it's like the altar kicks in now. Now, you're not actually being communicated with through a synthetic telepathy or psychotronics like they do now, right? At that point in the continuum, you guys were just programmed, and then
I think they tried. Yeah. I think they tried that along the lines. I mean, I've heard the little voices in that too, but I'm telling you.
Yeah,
I got my own right. I'm going to do what I'm going to do, and
exactly.
Nobody's going to make me. I got enough of my whips to catch on, and it may be headachy, it may make me cranky, or any of a number of things, but I know it pisses them off even worse.
Absolutely. Yeah, totally. Yeah, that's phenomenal. Have you ever written a book on that whole MK Ultra trip that you were involved in? Or?
No, I was I was thinking about it. I don't know if I'll even get the time.
Well, let's hope.
No, it's kind of like, mostly it would just tickle people's ears. Everybody likes to think it's, even with all the thousands of pages of the stuff from the Freedom of Information Act, most people are still thinking, oh, it's conspiracy theory stuff. And it's kind of, no, I can't give you anything that has my name on it because Richard Helms destroyed it. And, well, that's convenient. Well, it was very inconvenient for me because my medical records, my school records, my birth certificates, all that kind of stuff was in those records that he destroyed.
Wow.
And for a lot of us, that was back in '73. So anything, I want to get my DD 214 to get some VA help. Not that I'll ever go to the government for medical help.
Yeah, no kidding.
You know,
John, we're heading for a break. We'll be right back, everybody. Stay tuned. We're heading for a break.
Okay.